The breaking news from Carney's announcement last hour was aimed at easing the pain at the pump for Canadians, resulting from the spike in oil prices driven by the war in the Middle East. Here's the Prime Minister speaking just a few minutes ago.
We're announcing today that Canada's new government will temporarily suspend the federal fuel excise tax from next Monday until Labor Day. We're also removing the fuel excise tax on aviation fuels. This will remove up to 10 cents per litre on gasoline and 4 cents per litre on diesel fuel. Combined with our earlier elimination of the consumer carbon tax, our government will have reduced fuel prices on gas by up to 28 cents per litre. That's real relief for you and your family at the end of the day.
So now for more on the gas announcement and Carney's reaction to achieving a majority government, let's bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. So Janice, there was a lot in that announcement and even more in the Q&A. Let's walk through some of it.
Yeah, the Prime Minister said he was not out celebrating these by-election victories last night. He was busy working on announcements like this, really wanting to take a tone of humility and you know, right back at it today. Not at all triumphant or celebratory, notwithstanding the fact that his government has reached an important milestone in getting a majority of the House of Commons. This announcement today is not exactly what Conservatives were calling for a couple of weeks back. They were saying that all the federal taxes should be stripped off of the cost at the pumps, but they're doing some of it anyway. The 10 cents a litre fuel tax coming off for those who use regular gasoline. It's 4 cents on diesel, and this will affect sort of the cost of airline fuel as well. For those deficit hawks out there who say, sure, yeah, that's the extra, you know, money going back to the wallets of drivers, but what about the impact on the federal treasury? This change worth $2.4 billion, they say, with another $40 million on the airline portion of it. Mark Carney saying that they believe they can, in his words, recycle this, that government revenues in other areas are going to be going up, and they very carefully calibrated this to sort of remain inside sort of their overall kind of fiscal boundaries, if you will. He contrasted that with what he portrayed as the Conservatives proposing, something that would have been perhaps significantly more expensive. Remember, this is the sort of move that affects GST revenues as well, because the GST goes on top of everything else you pay for at the pump. He gave us another important kind of indication that this is just one of several economic moves coming. We've been watching to get a date for a spring economic update. He's now using the phrase "in a few weeks" to describe when that is coming. He says there will be a series of measures in there, both short-term and long-term payoffs for the government's strategy, he says, are coming. So we watch for that date from Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, even as I think with a number of recent announcements from his government, I think some of us feel like we're getting our mini budget in dribs and drabs in advance as the spring goes along. But in terms of sort of their ability to execute economic strategy like this, do they need to refresh the team? You know, is he sort of inspired by the results of the by-election to want to call a general? No and no. No cabinet shuffle, he said. He's confident with the team he has. He says he's not considering calling an election. He says people want the government to govern. And so he shall in the various ways that he was describing for reporters this morning.
Now, a lot of people, of course, have called into question what they call political maneuvering, because even as the Prime Minister is laying out plans, now that he has a majority government, he's still facing a lot of questions about how he got there. So what did he have to say about that?
Yeah, and these are concerns we've seen expressed on the streets this morning. Still some unease about floor crossers helping to deliver this majority government. It's something Opposition Leader Pierre Poilievre was continuing to emphasize about the by-election results. By-elections in which his party really, their share of the vote went down substantially, but he wanting to sort of go on attack last evening, talking about in his social media post the the fact that this just resulted from what he called backroom deals by people who betrayed the voters who voted for them and then decided to switch over to the Liberals. Carney tried to sort of defend against the suggestion that this was an ill-gotten majority on his part. He took issue with the suggestion that they didn't really win because these were all Liberal seats anyway, pointing out just how close Terrebonne is and how this is a nationalist Quebec riding, not one that is normally a Liberal turf, not wanting to undermine or discredit the success that they had there and the hard work that went into it. He was asked by our colleague about what's going to change going forward in this Parliament as a result of having a majority. And his answer was quite partisan and quite interesting. Take a listen.
There is a difference between real testimony, real substance, getting to issues, debating aspects of law, advancing. That's the job of parliamentarians, and showboating. We're going to have less of that. We're going to have more substance. I think all parliamentarians, in the end, will appreciate that, even if it's a change for some of them.
Giving a reference there to some filibuster tactics we saw earlier this year at the Justice Committee, alluding to the fact that he thinks even some people on the opposition bench might want to get past what have been very, very tense and sometimes conflict-driven partisan debates instead of policy moves in recent minority parliaments. Interesting, just as a final point, he talked about how he's open to taking ideas from anyone, but that to govern is to choose. And so even as he talks about wanting to move forward now with things like lawful access legislation, I think those crime bills will be things that'll move forward more quickly now in a majority government. He still wants to set a tone of conciliation, that this isn't sort of only Liberals deciding everything no matter what. We'll see if that tone continues, but that's what he's saying, at least on day one here, even as he is the ultimate, of course, decider, the person choosing among the suggestions in front of him.
Thanks for this, Janice. That is the CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Okay, so let's drill down a little bit more on that announcement that we heard from the Prime Minister that there will be the temporary suspension of the federal fuel tax on gasoline and diesel through the summer months. So for more on those gas prices and how they're affecting Canadians across the country, let's bring in the CBC's Mark Carney. Okay, so let's talk about the current situation right now. What is the price at the pumps looking like across the country?
Well, certainly not low, Arthi. I mean, a little lower than we have seen in the last couple weeks at various parts, but certainly not cheap by any means. In fact, still quite high. Let's bring up the map and we can show you where things stand. BC in particular continues to be the most expensive province when it comes to gas. Look at the difference just from Vancouver to Abbotsford. $2.08 a litre in Vancouver, $190.1 a litre in Abbotsford. In Alberta, there's a bit of a difference between Edmonton and Calgary. You could see Manitoba seems to be pretty average right across the province. The price that you're seeing in Winnipeg there, $173.4 a litre. Go over to Quebec for a second, where you could see there's a bit of a discrepancy between Montreal and Quebec City, where it's just under $2 a litre now. Nova Scotia, 178.7 cents a litre. Ontario seems to be pretty stable between the 170 and 172 marks that you're seeing between Toronto and Ottawa, as it is pretty much geographically in the center of or close to the center of the country. The same goes for prices. We spoke to drivers in Toronto this morning to get their thoughts on the price of gas as it stands right now. Look, no one is saying that they like the price of gas where it is right now, but there's a bit of a difference in terms of tolerance to it. Have a listen.
I think the most pressing issue right now is perhaps lowering the gas taxes to help. I mean, everybody feels that, anybody who uses a vehicle. And not only that, but all the transportation, all the truckers, everything, it'll be affected in the costs of absolutely everything. So I think if they lower that, we see government revenues will be down, but it'll help Canadians and they'll feel positive about that.
Yeah. It's cost of doing business, right? You're in Canada, not in Africa. So I think I'm okay. I mean, it's not a big deal. To be honest with you, I think the gas prices, okay, maybe they are a little bit higher on the higher end, but I think it's okay. It's still manageable.
Pretty wide dichotomy there from it's a major thing to it's not a big deal. But when you factor in the price of gas going higher and that surprise cost, in addition to your food, your rent or mortgage or whatever the case may be, and all the other bills you're paying, a lot of Canadians are looking for some relief right now.
You also factor in the time of year. Gas prices are scheduled to get a slight bump very soon. Tell us more about that.
Yes, that's because of the old summer blend that we always see coming to a gas station near you around this time of year every year. It costs more because it's more expensive to produce. It will cost at least 5 more cents per liter at the gas pump. I say will, but it could already because it will be implemented no later than April 15th. But here is Heather Exner-Perot. She's a senior fellow and director of energy, natural resources and environment at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute in Ottawa. Many people think summer gas is a scam. She says, no, it is a legitimate thing.
Yeah, so it does provide a better kind of fuel for summer driving. It adds about 5 to 10 to 15 cents of the cost. It doesn't all happen in one day. Refineries kind of do this over the series of a couple of days or a couple of weeks. But you always do see a bump in gas prices around this time of year.
So as I mentioned, they will be fully instituted into gas pumps around the country by tomorrow. Some may have it already. You may be paying that extra bump already, or it may come in a couple days depending on where you get your gas. But aren't they just in time for summer road trips, camping trips, and the like?
Thanks for this, Mark. That's the CBC's Mark Carney.